As Benjamin Franklin once said, failure to plan is planning to fail. And whenever it comes to work-life balance, I couldn't agree more. I'm Josh Riggs, and I've owned and operated over 4 different businesses. I've done this while still maintaining a healthy and active social life and enjoying hobbies along with spending time with family. This is something that's very hard to do, and when I first started, something that I actually thought was impossible. But I found a 5-step process that I really want to share with you that can make it happen. So let's get started. Step number 1 was probably the hardest thing for me because it wasn't just doing some simple task. It was literally changing my mindset on the whole thing. And in all honesty, this is kind of the first step that I always have to take whenever doing something new. I have to change the way I look at things and completely rewrite my mindset on something. I spent so much time thinking about how little time I had that I just felt like everything was impossible, that I couldn't possibly do anything more. I couldn't possibly do something I enjoy because there was just so much that had to be done. However, once I changed my mindset from I don't have time to I have complete and total control of my time, the whole world changed. It no longer became a factor of what I had time for and what I didn't have time for. It became a reality of what I was prioritizing and what I wasn't prioritizing. The truth is, I always had time. I just was prioritizing the wrong things. I didn't know what actually mattered, so I just tried to do everything. And that really led to some really hectic hours and some crazy schedules. Once I realized that if I just worry about the things that matter to me and worry about things that I actually want to prioritize, I could actually change another very important thing in my life. Whether I was actually going to do something or whether I wasn't going to do something. This might seem kind of basic, but the truth is, before I was just saying yes to everything. I just had a cram-packed schedule and I just did a bunch of half-assed work all the time. And honestly, that gets you nowhere. However, once I realized that I was only going to do things that I prioritized, and what I prioritized, I was going to give my all to, I then realized I will only do a hell yes or a hell no. If an opportunity comes up and I'm not all in, then I'm not going to do it because I know that I'll only half-ass it so I can get done with it and move on. And really, nothing good comes out of that. The next thing that I had to really change my mindset on is the fact that I actually had a boss. Now, whenever I became an entrepreneur, I was so excited about having no one telling me what to do that I kind of ran with that. And I didn't have any kind of discipline or any kind of hard boundaries or no one to report to or anything keeping me in check. One of the best parts of being your own boss is that you have no boss. But one of the downsides of being your own boss is that you have no boss. That's why I had to make one. And in my situation, that boss was my schedule, my calendar. And I look at my calendar as my boss. If it says I have something to do, I make sure I get that done. But more on that later. We're actually going to move into step number 2. So step number 2 actually has a little bit to do with step number 1. It's really setting down and figuring out what my priorities are. Now, there's 100 different things you could be worried about in a day. It's just the truth. However, if you look at things through a priority lens, you're only going to focus on the things that matter. You're only going to do the things that matter. For me, example, I like to pick 3 things. My priorities are self-improvement, my business, and my family and relationships. Those are the 3 things that are most important to me. And if whatever it is that's coming across my path doesn't fit those 3 things, then I'm no longer going to be interested in doing them. And it's a hell no for me. And I have to stay solid on that because I don't want to fall down the path of having a cram-packed schedule full of meaningless tasks. And as long as you're following those priorities, anything you do will be meaningful. The other good thing about that, leading into step 3, is you can use those 3 priorities, whatever they may be for you, to really plan out your day and make sure you're accomplishing your goals and your tasks. Now, picking these priorities can be very challenging. I'm actually going to do a whole video just on that because, trust me, it gets deep and I don't have nearly enough time to go over all the different aspects of it. However, let's move on to task number 3 because that's when the fun stuff starts. Now, step number 3 is going to be actually listening to your boss and making sure your boss is set up in the right way. Now, as I mentioned, I use Google Calendars. It works very well for me. It's free and it integrates with almost everything. So the thing about Google Calendar, though, is it only works if you set it up the right way with the right mindset. There are 3 different things you can use in Google Calendars: events, tasks, and reminders. I utilize all of them, but we're going to start with events. So as I mentioned, I set my priorities, and there's going to be things that you do on a daily basis to make sure that you're actually chipping away at your goal. For example, self-improvement is a big thing for me. So working out is going to be top priority for me. if I'm not working on my physical health, then I am going to be awful and I just don't work or operate as well as I should. So blocking off a time that I'm going to use to work out, regardless of how many times a week it is, for me, I like to do it at least 5 times a week. And I know that I'm going to work best around noon. So around noon, I'm going to block off an hour and a half, and that's going to be my workout time. Now, the reason why I call these rocks is because these are going to be very heavy, very solid objects on your schedule, things that should not move easily. These are things that you hold very, very important, and they are kind of the foundation of your schedule, and everything else gets put around them. Just like if there's a rock in the middle of the road and it was too big to blow up, they'd build the road around this. Same idea. So in this situation, working out is going to be a very heavy rock for me, and I'm not going to move it unless I absolutely have to. Now that we have our rocks in place, now we can actually plan for the day-to-day stuff. And that's going to bring me into step number 4. So step number 4 is actually going to be using something called Google Keeps. Now, Google Keeps is just going to be used for a list maker, basically. You can use a pen and paper. However, the problem with that is you're not always going to have that pen and paper with you, but you more than likely will always have your phone with you. And that's why I made the switch to Google Keeps. I personally like breaking up my list into each category that I find important. So I have my businesses broken up, and I also have my categories in self-improvement, work, and family time, all broken up into separate categories. Now, this list is a very important foundation for me because anytime something comes up in my life, it goes on the list. If it doesn't go on the list, I'm probably going to forget about it and it's probably not going to happen. So I make sure that I add whatever happens in my life to my list so that I can make sure that I can add that to my calendar later. So for example, if someone walks up to me and says, "Hey Josh, we need to work on a new ad for this thing that's coming up, a new Google ad that's coming," I will go ahead and make Google ad to my list. Now that I have my list, we can move on to step number 5. And that is probably where you're going to spend a lot of your time. Okay, so step number 5 is where we actually fill in the little blanks that we have from our list. So in Google Keeps, you can actually open it up on the same section that you have Google Calendars open. So you can take a look at your list and look at your day and fill in the gaps based on what's important, what needs done first. For example, we talked about those Google ads. I can look at my calendar and I can block off time for making Google ads because it's on my list and I know I need to get it done. And I know that I need to get it done at that time because my boss told me I need to get it done at that time. Now, I try my best to make sure I am very logical with the amount of time I'm giving because I will only work on this task for the allotted time that I give myself. For example, say I didn't get the Google ads done. The next day, I'm going to actually add Google ads to my calendar again and keep chunking away at it until I get it done. Now, there's always those little things that don't really take much time, but you still need to remember to do them. That's whenever I use the task feature in Google Calendars. So what I like to do is whenever something comes up that I need to get done, but I don't necessarily have a set time I need to do it, or even if there is a set time I need to do it, but it doesn't take me long to do it. For example, a Facebook post, I'll find the time of day that that Facebook post needs to go live, and I'll set a task for that time. And the reason why I like doing this is because I know that it's something that I can do even if it's on top of an event, because it's not going to take me very long and I can just knock it out of the way and then check it off and move on. Also, if it's something that can be carried over to the next day, and I absolutely just can't get it done that day, it will automatically carry over for me. So even though I didn't get it done the day I wanted to, the task will continue to carry on until eventually I mark it off and get it done. This is also very useful for those little things that people ask you to do and you know you need to get done, but you don't have a set time that needs to get it done. For example, say my girlfriend says I need to go get some eggs. I can set a task to go get some eggs, so I'll remember to go do it, but I don't have to set an exact time to do it. So that way I know it's still there. I still need to get it done when it fits in my schedule, but it's not something that's glaring at me at 5 p.m. or some random time during the day. Now, the most important part of all this is that it actually gets done. So I actually block off a time at the end of each day and I make it a rock where I plan out my next day. I like to do this personally day by day because priorities are changing constantly as far as what you need to get done for work or some family event coming up. So it's really hard to plan out an entire week. However, if I take it day by day and I have a very accurate list, it's very easy for me to continue to update my calendar as I go. I think it's very important that I plan it out the day before, so the next day I have a solid game plan, I know what I'm getting done, and I know exactly what I need to accomplish. And honestly, this is the only way that I've managed to have freedom. It's because I've actually prioritized things, and I have set times to actually get things done. Before, when I used to just look at all the things I needed to get done as a huge lump sum, it was incredibly discouraging. I always felt overwhelmed, and I ended up actually getting less work done because I spent more time stressing about all the work I had to do. Now everything's in bite-sized chunks. It's very manageable for me. And I can actually knock out several of my tasks throughout the week versus trying to think about all the tasks that I need to get done in one day and not actually getting anything done. This was a huge help for me and something that really changed my perspective on all this. Now, something else that's very important is incorporating things that you just simply enjoy. Having just you time. This is something that took me a long time to start putting into my calendar. And I actually had to force myself to go out and find some hobbies, which I made a video on how I decided what hobbies I wanted to pick. And I actually forced myself to put those into the calendar. I found that I actually end up being more productive on days that I am working or times that I am working if I allow myself some time to just relax and enjoy and recharge. I also come up with some of my best ideas during those times. So I found it to be very important, and I talk about that a little bit more in the other video. I really hope this gave you some insight on how I've managed my schedule to this point, and I hope it might give you some feedback that you can take away and maybe utilize. There'll be links to all these different applications in the description, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. I'll see you in the next one.